Rhaenyra back on Dragonstone trying to figure things out as best as she can from there. And it's like, you basically just have a continuation of that this episode, where Rhaenyra there's been like two storylines going on with her. One of which has been to find new riders for these dragons that are available to increase her number of dragons. And the other is her reaching out and making overtures towards the small folk. And sure, those are things that logically make sense, right? As options to pursue and exercise. Here, in her quest for dragon riders, that she's kind of like opening the field up to small folk. You could maybe call it desperation. The episode actually opens with Rhaenyra meeting with a young man on, I'm guessing it's a beach, right? It's a coast. Not important. But anyway, the two of them have kind of faced off, as well as the dragons being present. So Rhaenyra is standing, her dragon's behind her, this guy, his dragon's behind him. His name is Aaron. He is from Hull. Basically, which we know, he didn't, unlike some of the other people in play here, he didn't go out searching for the dragon or looking for an opportunity to become a dragon rider. He was out about minding his own business when the dragon came and found him. And in conversation with him, Rhaenyra asked him questions about, where'd you get the dragon from? And he explains that, like, the dragon found him and whatnot. She tries to dig into his background because it's believed that being a dragon rider or being able to ride dragons is dependent on one's ties to House Targaryen. And I found it interesting because thinking back over the previous episodes, there's been these scenes at the shipyards. Corlys Velaryon is like a waterman. Like these are seafaring people. And so, we've seen him over the course of the season out at the shipyards speaking to these two young men. In one of the previous episodes, Rhaenyra acknowledges indirectly or makes mention indirectly about her knowledge that these two young men that we see throughout the episodes, like seemingly randomly, but given that they keep coming back or they keep popping up, and there's effort made to specifically land on them, not just them and other random shipbuilders, but these two in particular, that there's a significance to it. If you think back on it, Rhaenyra pretty much hinted, probably isn't the word, but indirectly called out Corlys, that she's met these two kids, she sees them, she looks at them, she knows that they are his children, but she is his wife, and so there's some shenanigans that have taken place. I've been watching the episodes with an eye towards, what's the significance of these two? Because the camera keeps going back to them. And so here we see that Seasmoke, who previously belonged to Rhaenyra Velaryon, that his dragon has been riderless since his death. And so here we see what the significance of them is, where the one guy, Aaron, he turns out to, however it is that it works out, Seasmoke seeks him out, and chooses him as its rider. So what remains to be seen is what's the destiny for the other son, as Corlys does go to speak to him to inform him that his brother stepped forward as a dragon rider. If you think back, maybe, what is this now, 2 or so episodes ago? I think it was the episode after Rhaenyra died, that Corlys and Baela were talking, and he asked her about becoming his heir, and she mentioned to him that, the sea isn't really her thing, and mentioned specifically that he needed someone who was of, Salton Sea or something like that, And then here you have it where the other son mentions this thing about someone being of salt and sea. And I'm gonna go ahead and call it now. I think that's the future of this guy. As per usual, each episode we kind of have to check in with Damon. And here, once again, he is hallucinating and seeing Viserys, who reiterates to him that he never really wanted to be king. But this is something not just that he didn't want to be king, but it's symbolized through the crown, right? That he never really wanted the crown. He never really wanted to be king. But recognizes that Daemon's always wanted the crown. Daemon's always wanted the title. And this is something that we see time and time again, where even Rhaenyra, right, started out really not wanting to be queen, right? Her fight right now is really about bringing peace to the realm, not necessarily a desire to just sit on the throne. And you think about it, it's like it's more a matter of duty and obligation rather than ambition or something that she strives and cares for. You look at over on Team Green with both Aegon and Aemon, you see some of that as well, where initially Aegon, throughout his childhood and up until the moment where they plotted and schemed to make him king, fought tooth and nail against becoming king, right? Restating in many ways that he didn't want to be king until the moment they put him on the throne, and then that changed, right? And you have it where Aemon has... You can kind of look at it like there's a lot of similarities between him and Daemon, right? Not just their similar sounding names, but this thing of Aemon where putting aside the issues between him and Rhaenyra, his brother being on the throne, Aemon has always wanted that position, right? What little preparation and training his brother and arguably his sister got for this role as being ruler of the Seven Kingdoms, it was never afforded to him, right? He was never supposed to be arguably in line for the throne. But yet we see him pushing for it. Quite often what we see happen is that the people who are vying to sit on the Iron Throne are the very people who have no business being on it, because we can tell that they're going to be terrible leaders, terrible rulers. And so going back to Daemon, we see that he's still here at Harrenhal, uniting the river people together, and the young river guy, with the grandfather. His grandfather at this point has died, and he now comes to kind of negotiate with Daemon. And we see that the other houses, if they haven't bent the knee already, they're on the verge of it. So there's some discomfort there. First off, I was really impressed with the young man, because when we saw him previously, he fell back on his grandfather and his grandfather's wishes rather than taking the helm. But it's more a matter of a respecting, that his grandfather was still alive, and his grandfather passes away, and he slides right on into that role. Gone is shy might not be the word, but the more passive and deferential young man that Daemon met earlier. This young man, who can't be much older, is driving a hard bargain, quite self-assured, believes in himself and whatnot. And so Daemon is there at Harrenhal trying to, negotiate once again to bring these various houses onto Team Black. And there's some pushback where, the young man views it as Daemon is willing to say and do whatever he has to. And it's like, yes, Daemon does have to make some sacrifices in that he has to behead the guy that he sent out really to commit the atrocities that united House Black. So the upside is that, for all intents and purposes, Daemon has done the seemingly impossible and now has an army. Back on Dragonstone, in what is another one of several insane scenes in this show's second season, is Rhaenyra pretty much, for lack of a better term, unleashing the dragons on her prospective talents. Rhaenyra, seeing the situation with Sea Smoke and how that worked out, she then puts out a call, more of a general call, to, at the White Worm's suggestion, because sort of what she did last time was going into the scrolls and digging through them to kind of read through the history. The White Worm explains to Rhaenyra that part of the problem with, like the previous episode, when she allowed this knight to try out the dragon, is that she went looking in the wrong place or using the wrong methodology. Standing and whatnot in society aren't really what's necessary. So the White Worm actually suggests that, instead of looking through the history books and almanacs and scrolls and whatnot, to try searching somewhere else. So this leads to seemingly every random, Targaryen bastard coming forward to see if they might be so lucky as to become a dragon rider. The scene was actually just insane. First off, I think it shows you how gangster Rhaenyra is, because if you look at it, like, these dragons can just straight up kill you, right? And never mind, you might have a dragon, all of them aren't yours, and there might be another dragon that doesn't like you. But yet we see Rhaenyra turn her back on the dragon. And, man, some of them people got burnt up, they got thrown off the cliff thing and whatnot. And the crazy thing about it is, like, how it's set up, where Rhaenyra learned a lesson from last episode, with the night guy, where she was there standing just a little bit beyond him while he introduced himself to the dragon. And so, it continues on and continues on until there's only two guys left. It's a pretty interesting scene with all of these people gathered to see really, like, literally who makes it through this trial by fire, where we see Rhaenyra brings them into the dragon pit on the first level and then retires up to the second level to watch from a safer distance, and bedlam ensues. Hank Hammer, I don't see much of a problem with him, as throughout the season he seemed to be a pretty decent person, like stand-up guy. Ulf, I kinda don't feel so comfortable with. Once it's settled, where Ulf, like, his dragon isn't even like the one that's featured right now, that Rhaenyra's trying to get paired up, but he finds the dragon and the dragon finds him. And so it gives way to a scene with Aemon where, probably operating from the perspective of, well, here's this dragon coming into my kingdom and I'm not going to stand for it. And he takes off after the dragon. And so we see Aemon give chase, and then suddenly he stops short and tells Vhagar to retreat, where he abruptly turns back. And it was unclear why at first. The camera shifts and we see Rhaenyra standing out in front of Dragonstone and has 3 dragons with her. You see Rhaenyra and she's backed by these dragons. Now, if you think about it, back to when she took all those people down into the dragon pit, she turns her back on Vermithor, right? Which is a risk you're taking. The scene is quite cool because here it is that, in the previous episode, you had the dragon behind her. Here, there's that image that we've seen going back to even the first season of Rhaenyra standing with this huge dragon behind her. And here we see it where it's a scene something along those lines, but instead of just being the one dragon backing her, she has 3.
Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media.